Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry. This one actually based on an article that I found online while reading my Google News and my Smart News app info. So thank you everyone again for your suggestions. Please keep them coming. But this one, when I found that information, when I found that entry, I definitely wanted to share it here because it absolutely fits with the oddities portion of my series. In this case, the oddity has to do with the death of a jockey who actually still won the race. It's a bit of unfortunate news, of course, associated with his death, but definitely when it comes to history, it's the only time, thankfully, that has ever occurred. And to this day, anything involving this particular legend, it is 100% absolutely true. This gentleman did indeed die while in a horse race, but still ended up winning the actual race itself. Very fascinating stuff when I was reading the information, and I'm very happy again to share it with everyone here. But it has to do with this. You're looking at him now. His name was Frank Hayes, and again, his claim to history is being the only jockey to have ever won a race after his death. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the information associated with this particular oddity, this particular stamp in history. So as far as Frank Hayes himself, you have to go back to about 1888 for his particular birth. There's no exact date associated with that time period, so a lot of it still remains up in the air in terms of its mysteriousness. But what we do know is he was born to an Irish American family, and then they ended up living there in New York, somewhere in downtown Brooklyn. In fact, he lived there with his mother and his sister, although I did not see any mention as far as a father. But somewhere along the way, at a young age, he fell in love with horses. He fell in love with racetracks as well. The entire association of those games, and so he definitely wanted to ensure that he was going to be a jockey, or at least work in that particular career when it came to horse racing. So somewhere in that time period, in his young age, he was hired as a stable hand for a gentleman named James K.L. Frayling, who ended up being a popular horse breeder who had several thoroughbreds there as well. Unfortunately, though, Frank Hayes, for whatever reason, was a trainer or became a stable hand slash trainer, but nothing close to a jockey. For whatever reason, his dream of being a jockey was still delayed up until a certain point. Now, he was still able to handle the horses, like he was still training them, and then apparently he spent much hours taking care of them, being, a stable hand. And eventually, when several races were won, it was thankfully because of his particular training. So he did indeed help out when it came to those wins. The only problem, though, was everything involving the jockey in those races was the big winner. Like, they were the ones that got all the attention, all the glamour, all the glory, all the pictures, and of course those big flowers. And then he in turn would quietly take the horse back to the stable, realizing that he was so close to having that fame, but still so far away. Well, when I was reading the information, it reminded me of Rudy, of course, that famous movie where someone, again, has the dream and passion of playing in college football, but still having so many obstacles in the way. Well, as luck would have it, I don't know if this could be necessarily called luck, fate, or some kind of destiny. In June of 1923, that's when his first, and as it turns out, only opportunity came about. So Mr. Frayling had a wife who went by the name of Miss A.M. Frayling, and she in turn had her own horse that was called Sweet Kiss. Very good name. I like that name when it comes to the horse. So this lady, she wanted to see this horse being held, like in terms of a race, somewhere around June 4th of 1923. The only problem, though, was there were no jockeys around. I don't know if one of the jockeys was already planned and they got sick, or they just couldn't make it, or they had some other obstacle in the way, or if there was never really a jockey at all because of her short notice. Either way, though, this was a perfect opportunity for Frank to finally get in. Just like Rudy, when it came to having that that play at the very last moment. Here he was, in this case, having a perfect opportunity to be in a horse race there at Belmont Park. So, of course, he offered his services, but at the beginning, Miss Frayling stated that no, and this was because of his weight. He apparently, even though he was fit, he just wasn't fit enough for horse races. In fact, she told him that his chances of even getting in the top 5 because of his weight were pretty much nil. And so he, of course, was not going to let this particular moment slip out of his hands. And so he persuaded her so often, and she finally said yes. But I'm guessing it was with the condition of him having to slim down. The only problem, though, was it was less than a week away when it came to this particular race. So between that time period, that's when Frank decided to do something very ill-advised. He went on what was considered an extreme weight loss campaign. In fact, I was reading that it involved, of course, eating very little, but then having a lot of, I guess it was called like steam baths, something where it was just sweating and sweating and sweating, and he made it. In fact, in about 3 days, as I read in one article, 3 days no less, he lost 12 pounds. He went from 142 pounds to 130 pounds. That, of course, is so ill-advised. 12 pounds within just those small number of days is horrible when it comes to the body. In fact, the average diet, anything as far as losing weight, you're supposed to push at most around 2 pounds, and that's per week. Here in this case, he was able to do it 12 pounds in just 3 days or so. But he was very, very happy. Frank was obviously now within the right weight when it came to the skills needed for the race, and then Miss Frayling agreed on that part. And so on that fateful day, he came out and he was there at Belmont Park with the other jockeys about to race with that horse called Sweet Kiss. And in fact, when he was there, he was so excited. There he was, all dressed out in some of the clothing that was associated with the jockeys that was provided, in fact, by Miss Frayling, that he went over to the other jockeys, said hello, introduced himself, and then said, quote unquote, "Today's a good day to make history." And as you're about to hear in a minute, unfortunately, it's history for all the wrong reasons. But there he was on the horse itself, along with the other jockeys. And then that was it. The race was on. And so the race started. It was a 2-mile course. It was made up of 12 jumps. If somebody can explain to me like what the jump is that the thing where the horses jump over those hurdles? Is that correct? Or do they jump over something else? Or is jump considered more of like a metric of some sort? Either way, though, it was a 2-mile course, and then he and his horse, Sweet Kiss, were behind throughout most of the race itself. However, and this was varied. Like I read in one instance it was halfway through the race, and then another instance I heard it was almost towards the end. Either way, though, all of a sudden, he pulled up ahead. Him and Sweet Kiss, especially on the final turn, were just now leading. In fact, they were leading by a head. And this was the neat thing about the particular story. Sweet Kiss was a 20-to-1 shot when it came to winning everything. In fact, the favorite was another horse that was named Gimme. Now, how's that for a name, huh? When it comes to that particular horse. But yes, here he was, 20-to-1 shot with a rookie trainer, a rookie jockey, no less. And then now he was actually ahead. And he was ahead by just ahead, whatever that means when it comes to the measuring distances there on horse tracks. But yes, he was pulling ahead, and this caused everyone else to get super excited within Belmont Park. They started rising to their feet. They were cheering him on, and people saw, in fact, that Frank Hayes was slumping a little bit forward, almost like towards the ear of the horse, and they were assuming that he was telling the horse that, yes, please push along, thank you so much. Something along those lines, like whispering good things into Sweet Kiss's ears because of being able to pull ahead. And as it turns out, he won. Frank won the actual race. Him and Sweet Horse won the race, and they won again by just ahead, whatever that distance is, again, there within horse races. And so the horse continued running. Everyone was jumping, and there was excitement. There was just extreme, let's say, congratulations all around until this happened. Until about another 100 yards in, the horse horse went into an off area, and then that's when Frank Hayes, who was still slumped over by the horse's neck, toppled. He actually went straight into the ground face first. And then, of course, everybody was wondering what just happened. And so there was a physician there in the race. His name was Dr. John A.H. Voorhees. He ran straight to the scene. He went over, but it was too little, too late. Frank Hayes was declared dead right on the spot, right there at Belmont Park. In fact, he was declared dead of a heart failure, and it was surmised by the doctor that he was probably dead halfway through the race. Now, that's like the longest time period that I read in one article, and again in the other article it was more closer towards the end of the race that's when he was declared dead. But either way, though, the distinction, the oddity associated with the entire story is this: he won. Frank Hayes won the race, but he died right before the actual end of the race. So here you have technically a corpse that won the race there at Belmont Park. Is incredible. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is truth. Truly is stranger than fiction. But as it turns out, everyone was, of course, shocked at what was happening, and they couldn't understand, how could this actually occur? The club there and then the arena, the actual location, they decided as a mark of respect, here was this guy, a brand new rookie, and having a 21 shot, and he ended up winning. They decided to still declare him the winner of that race. And so he was the first and only winner there in Belmont Park, and pretty much in all of racehorsing history, to be declared a dead man to have won the race. And about 3 days later, he was buried still in those same clothings. And I imagine that there was a huge turnout because of this distinction. But still, if you had to go out one way in life, here was Frank Hayes finally getting his chance, winning the actual race on his very first try. What a way to go when it comes to that, because he actually died doing what he loved. Like, he literally died doing the one thing that he loved and winning it in a spectacular fashion. Crazy stuff when I was reading this information. If you ever wondered what happened to the horse afterwards, Sweet Kiss, there was a lot of superstition involving the horse because of this unusual circumstance, because of this oddity. In fact, immediately people started calling Sweet Kiss now, instead of calling them Sweet Kiss, it was Sweet Kiss of Death. And unfortunately, Miss Frayling, she could not get any other jockey to get on the horse to win any other races because of the superstitions involved. And so Sweet Kiss was then retired pretty much as is, but they held the distinction, the horse held the distinction of having one win, 100%, one race, and then that was it, one jockey. So fascinating stuff there too. But what do you guys think as far as this particular Mysteries and Oddities story? Here you have this gentleman, Frank Hayes, the only jockey to have died within the race and still won the actual race itself. If anyone has any more information, anything else might have missed, please post those comments below. Maybe if anyone there has been to Belmont Park, and now that you know this history, next time you're there and you see the winning track, just remember that sometime back in June of 1923, almost coming to 100 years now, you had history in the making right there because of Frank Hayes. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.